A very good evening to everybody here. After the two talks on the renal cysts, now I will be talking about MRI in cervical cancer imaging, patterns, pitfalls, and pearls. Cervical cancer is the fourth most common cancer in women worldwide, with over 85% cases in the developing countries. Now it is second to breast cancer in Nepal, with the Globocan statistics saying that it is accounting for about 18% of all the cancers in women. So the role of MRI in cervical cancer has emerged with the FIGO 2018 staging system, including the MRI and other imaging modalities in the staging process. Though this is because of the global improvement in access to imaging, that there has been a change and a shift from the clinical staging to now clinical radiological staging. Though it has been incorporated in the FIGO staging, it remains optional and is not mandatory. Use of such imaging makes the staging more reproducible and objective, unlike the previous clinical-based, there was a lot of over or under staging. So there's a lot of improvement in the accuracy of local staging and lymph nodal involvement. A better treatment planning can be done, and also the response to treatment can be assessed well. A good image would require the MRI to be done in a 1.5 Tesla MR scanner at least. The patient is asked to void bladder about 30 minutes before the exam so that she has a partially distended bladder. The rectum should be empty, which can be obtained with bowel cleansing. Patient should be fasting for at least 4 hours. This would reduce the bowel artifacts, particularly on the TWI sequences. Use of a vaginal gel is optional. Phase array surface coils are used, and ideally the study should be done prior to a biopsy. So there are different sequences. Mostly it is a small FOV T2 weighted imaging, sagittal, oblique axial and coronal planes, which are obtained. A larger FOV T1 and T2 are also done to look at the para-aortic lymph nodes, liver, as well as the kidneys for hydronephrosis. However, fundamental sequences for cervical cancer imaging remain T2 and DWI, with contrast enhanced being reserved for certain conditions, like when we are planning a fertility-sparing surgery. So it is to be noted that we have to look at the oblique, axial, and coronal T2 weighted sequences and not, I'll just get the laser, yeah, and not the axial, which is axial to the true anatomical plane, because we want the true axial of the cervix, which is perpendicular and parallel to the cervical canal, in order to look at the stroma and the parametrial invasion better. The cervical cancer is seen the best on a T2 sequence where the zonal anatomy is seen very well. It shows an intermediate signal T2 on the T2 sequence and can be well differentiated from the hypointense myometrium as well as the hypointense vaginal wall. And the high intensity endometrium is also well visualized. Unlike on a T1 sequence where it is seen as a homogeneously isointense mass without any zonal differentiation, on a contrast-enhanced study, it is seen as enhancing in the early arterial phase, and it shows peripheral enhancement, particularly for the masses which are larger. It shows restricted diffusion, as seen here, as high signal on DWI and low signal on the ADC sequence. These masses are seen to show restricted diffusion because of the increased tumor cellularity, and DWI has a role to play in early cervical cancer diagnosis for identifying the isointense tumors. It is a biomarker of cervical tumor treatment response because the ADC values tend to increase earlier than a change in size of the mass. And also it helps to differentiate recurrence from post-therapy changes. This is the T2 sequence of a patient who had a history of cervical cancer, where we can see 2 intermediate signal intensity masses, which were suspected to be recurrence. However, only one of these shows hypointense signal on ADC, while the other is hyperintense, suggestive of no restriction. So this is a Bartholin cyst, while the one on the right is a recurrent mass. The pitfalls associated with DWI are its inherent poor anatomical and low spatial resolution. The retained mucus in cervix may cause the T2 shine-through effect. Restricted diffusion can occur due to blood products post-biopsy because of the T2 blackout effect. Cytotoxic edema may simulate residual or recurrent disease. Desmoplastic reaction can also cause a confusion. So the pearl here is that we must correlate a DWI sequence with the ADC maps and T2-weighted sequences to avoid misinterpretation. And I've tried to tabulate it here to show the difference on T2, DWI, and ADC between fibrosis, edema, inflammation, and recurrence. And we also must be aware of the clinical history of the patient. So when we are measuring the tumor size, we need to obtain 3 orthogonal planes, and we have to take the greatest dimension for staging. Coming to the different patterns on MRI as per the FIGO staging. We know that the stage 1 is confined to the cervix. In these images, we see a small T2 intermediate signal intensity mass in the anterior lip, which is showing restricted diffusion and is a stage 1B1 disease because it is less than 2 centimeters. A stage 2 disease is either the involvement of upper vagina, as seen in this case, where this bulky cervical mass is also involving the anterior fornix and the vaginal wall. In such cases, use of vaginal gel may facilitate the identification of involvement of vaginal wall, as it can be clearly seen separate from the mass. The involvement of parametrium makes it a stage 2B disease, which is very important because prior to this stage, the treatment can be done by surgery, while 2B onwards, it is a chemoradiotherapy which should be done first. So here we see that there is a fibromuscular stroma which is seen on T2 axial as a hypointense ring, and if it is preserved, it has a negative predictive value of more than 90% to rule out parametrial invasion. The involvement of parametrium may be seen as a disruption of the low signal intensity stromal ring or the spiculated tumor margin extending beyond the cervical stroma, extending into the adjacent fat planes and encasing the adjacent ureter or vessels. There may be a pitfall with a large tumor, which may cause expansion of the stroma, making it thin and suspicious for parametrial invasion. So we have to be mindful of even a thin rim of the hypointensity around. Post-biopsy inflammation may cause another pitfall by overstaging because there's a lot of inflammation in the parametrium. A DWI will come to our rescue here because there will be no restriction on DWI and ADC sequences. A large FOV true axial image will cause a partial volume artifact leading to a false parametrial or adjacent organ invasion, as in this case where there is an apparent involvement of the bladder wall, which is clearly normal in the sagittal sequence. Another pitfall is the normal parauterine and the paracervical ligaments and vessels which may mimic parametrial tumors, but usually when they are normal, they are lesser than 3 millimeters and smooth. A stage 3 is also divided into 3A when it is involving the lower third of the vagina. As seen in these cases, the large intermediate signal intensity cervical mass is involving the anterior fornix, the anterior wall, going all the way down into the lower third of the vagina. MRI has a high accuracy of up to 93% in evaluating vaginal invasion. It is important to differentiate whether it is upper or lower third because the stage differs, as we just discussed. Distension and invasion have to be differentiated when there is a large exophytic tumor, and this differentiation can be facilitated by the use of a vaginal gel. 3B is the involvement of pelvic side walls, where we can see the extension into the parametrium and beyond. So there is the encasement of the distal ureter, and with that there is obstruction leading to hydronephrosis. So a periureteric invasion, just the presence of soft tissue around the distal ureter does not make it a 3B disease, but it is the presence of obstruction and hydronephrosis, which is a 3B disease. And otherwise, it is 2B. Lymph nodal involvement is also included in the FIGO 2018 staging as C3C1 when it is only the pelvic lymph nodes which are involved, and para-aortic lymph nodes up to the level of the renal vein are categorized as a stage 3C2. So MRI again has a high sensitivity and specificity, but it is not without pitfalls. Microscopic metastasis in normal-sized nodes may be there, causing a false negative. Enlarged lymph nodes due to inflammation or hyperplastic changes cause a false positive. And both the metastatic and the non-pathological nodes can show diffusion restriction. So it is important that we correlate different sequences, look for the size and morphology of the lymph nodes. In this example, we can see a large mass involving the cervix, which is also involving the posterior fornix and upper vagina, and there is a lymph node here in the left obturator region. So this is a stage 3C1 disease. Another example here of a bulky cervical mass with large lymph nodes extending up to the in the para-aortic region up to the renal vein. So this is a stage 3C2 disease. Stage 4 is moving beyond that. Stage 4A is involvement of the rectum or bladder. So here in this first sagittal T2, we can see a mass extending into the bladder, which is contiguous with the cervical mass, and the hypointense bladder wall is obliterated. While in the second shows a pitfall, which is bullous edema occurring due to the extrinsic pressure of the mass, or it may even be due to the actual invasion, and it has to be confirmed pathologically. So this is seen as a hyperintense laminated appearance with a preserved hypointense line of the bladder wall. A stage 4B is beyond, involving the inguinal or suprarenal lymph nodes or visceral metastasis. As in this case, there is a big mass which is replacing the uterus and the cervix, and there is a discrete mass seen separately involving the abdominal wall. So this is a stage 4B disease. Another important pattern is a cystic pattern with enhancing septae and nodular areas where there is a little bit of enhancement. There may be stromal invasion and extension into the parametrium, and this is a minimum deviation adenocarcinoma or adenomalignum, which is rarely seen but is to be kept in mind. So coming to the mimics of cervical cancer, there may be cervical polyps. These polyps are homogeneous. They are attached to the cervical wall or the endometrial wall if they are actually endometrial polyps, and they do not tend to show restriction. A cervical leiomyoma may have variable appearance depending upon the type of leiomyoma it is, and it may even encase the cervix. Unlike in this case where we do see the cervix separately, sometimes the leiomyoma may even encase it and simulate a cancer. Cystic lesions of the cervix are very commonly seen, and we just ignore them as Nabothian cysts or tunnel clusters, but we have to be mindful keeping in mind the adenoma malignum. So tunnel cluster has an aggregated cyst pattern. Cystic cervicitis may also show multiple cysts. A lobular endocervical glandular hyperplasia also has a flower cosmos sign with multiple smaller cysts in the center and larger cysts surrounding it. Essentially, in all these cases, there is no solid component which enhances, there is no stromal invasion, there is no parametrial invasion. Another pitfall is whether it is a cervical or endometrial cancer, and this is seen when we come across a large tumor or an indeterminate histopathology. There is a 7-point MRI scoring system for differentiating the two in histologically indeterminate cases. So hereby, in this example, we can see a large mass which is involving the cervix as well as the lower uterine body and the endometrium. So we can see here that the epicenter is in the cervix. There is a full thickness stromal invasion. It is also extending into the parametrium. There is an early arterial enhancement and a peripheral rim enhancement. In this case, there is no endometrial cavity, secretions in the endometrial cavity, but that is the fifth feature for considering the mass to have a cervical origin. The interpretation of this scoring system is that when 4 or more of these points are there, it is likely to be a cervical cancer more than the endometrial. This example is a 40-year-old lady with abnormal uterine bleeding, where we can see intermediate signal intensity on T2 involving the endometrium, endocervix, as well as the vagina, and also showing restricted diffusion. And on the coronal T2, large FOV, we can see the thickened omentum. So the biopsy showed this to be a tuberculosis of the genital system, and this tuberculosis is a well-known universal mimic. So I'm actually, this is my last slide. So the most important question is to be or not to be, because we know that up to 2A stages can be treated with surgery and has a lot better prognosis than 2B onwards, which need a chemoradiotherapy. So for this, the hypointense fibromuscular stroma has to be looked at on the T2 sequence. We must use a checklist rather than just jumping to conclusions. It is important to correlate T2 weighted images with other sequences. And it is also important to assess the tumor size in 3 dimensions using the greatest one for staging. Thank you.